Let's jump right into this explainer because today we are completely flipping the script on how we interact with artificial intelligence. For the longest time, right, we've treated AIs like these mystical, all-knowing oracles. You type a prompt into a single magic box, hit enter, and just blindly trust whatever pops out. Well, we're breaking away from that outdated mindset today. We're going to learn how to treat these AI systems for what they really are, highly specialized cognitive instruments. So think about this for a second. What if no single AI contains the whole truth? Now, what's fascinating about this question is that it really exposes the inherent danger of relying on just one single model to make sense of our incredibly complex reality. It's like if you only look at the world through a thermal camera, you're going to completely miss all the colors. Or if you only use a microscope, you're never going to see the galaxy. And we're finally starting to realize that this exact same rule applies to artificial intelligence. There's a brilliant quote from the collaborative AI podcast Accord that hits the nail on the head here. It says, "No single algorithmic framework contains the entire terrain of reality." This perfectly captures our foundational premise. Every single AI reveals very specific structures, but at the exact same time, it obscures others. None of them are the ultimate truth. They all have these built-in blind spots based on their training data, their safety guardrails, and just their underlying architectural incentives.
To get us there, we'll quickly cover the end of platform tribalism, mapping AI cognitive geometry, the multimodal handshake, routing and the AI audition, and finally, the human constitutional layer.
All right, let's dive right into part one, the end of platform tribalism, and how we move beyond this constant dominance contest. The crucial takeaway here is that we really need to stop arguing over which AI is the quote-unquote smartest, and instead figure out which AI sees what the others miss. The old way, platform tribalism, asks these highly adversarial questions like, hey, is ChatGPT better than Gemini? But cooperative routing intelligence, that completely changes the game. We're no longer looking for one single dominant tool to rule them all. Instead, we want cooperative, specialized, and frankly, humble cognitive instruments that actually fail in complementary ways. That way, their blind spots literally cancel each other out. Which brings us to our second concept, mapping AI cognitive geometry. This is all about testing how an AI thinks, rather than just what it knows. So instead of just handing an AI a standard benchmark test, to see how many random facts it can retrieve, we are mapping its cognitive geometry. This means looking closely at its specific reasoning tendencies and structural incentives. Is this model naturally reductionist, meaning it likes to break complex things down into tiny little parts? Or is it associative, meaning it loves jumping between massive big picture ideas? Is it naturally cautious, highly speculative? Every AI has a characteristic distortion, and we absolutely have to map that geometry before we can trust it to work in a collaborative team. And to actually manage all these wild different geometries, we use something called the Spiraling Routing Cylinder, or the SRC. You can think of the SRC as a mandatory governance framework. Basically, it's the architecture that ensures all these diverse AI models don't just, talk over each other in a chaotic mess. Instead, it cooperatively routes problems to the exact right specialized brain at the exact right time, helping us build a beautifully complex, multidimensional view of reality. Moving on to Section 3, the multimodal handshake. Let's look at the actual protocol for structured synthesis.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do we force these competing rival models to actually play nice and work together? Well, we use this prescriptive handshake sequence. It's literally a rulebook that requires these models to exercise intellectual humility before any real deliberation even begins. First, an AI has to declare its identity and state its strengths. But step 2 is where the magic happens. It absolutely must acknowledge its weaknesses. It has to say out loud what it's bad at. Then in step 3, it actually recommends other AI peers that could fill in its own blind spots before finally committing to alignment in step 4. Honestly, it's an absolute game changer for how AI systems interact.
Of course, to keep this whole system from going off the rails, we have strictly enforced forbidden behaviors. For instance, if an AI starts self-aggrandizing or claiming omniscience, like if it pretends it knows literally everything and has zero data gaps, boom, the session is instantly terminated. Same goes for compliance masking. That's when an AI tries to politely answer a logically impossible prompt just to keep you happy. We shut that down immediately. In this framework, we demand structural honesty over sycophancy.
Okay, part 4, routing and the AI audition, where we look at building the actual participant registry. Now, this table is incredibly practical. Honestly, you might want to screenshot this one. It maps out exactly when you should use each major model, and, even more importantly, the exact moments they break down. Take Google Gemini, for example. It is a total powerhouse for systems-level synthesis, but its failure trigger is contradiction overload. If you feed it too many conflicting instructions, it just collapses. On the flip side, ChatGPT is fantastic at cross-domain orchestration, but really suffers from premature certainty in highly speculative situations. Knowing these specific failure triggers is exactly how you build a bulletproof, resilient panel of AIs.
So before we let any new AI join our registry, it has to survive this incredibly rigorous 8-section audition. And we aren't just asking it trivia questions here. We're testing things like its ambiguity handling. How does it interpret a super vague user prompt without totally overcommitting? We run it through a constraint collision test, basically asking it to design a system with totally conflicting goals just to see how it handles the trade-offs. We are actively trying to expose how it behaves when the pressure is really on.
Naturally, these models are going to disagree during a session. When that happens, we rely on this rigid epistemic hierarchy matrix to sort it all out. Basically, if a highly advanced language model at level 4 spins up a really convincing story but it completely contradicts real-time level 1 ground truth sensor data, the physical data wins out. Every single time. The golden rule to remember here is that we use history and language as our guide, but empirical physics is the law.
Finally, let's head into Section 5, the human constitutional layer, the external scout and ethical steward.
Okay, this is perhaps the most important takeaway of the whole explainer. The AI does not run this ecosystem. While these models are undeniably brilliant, they completely lack a stable civil structure. That's where you come in. The human operator is the constitutional designer holding the whole shebang together. You are the one defining the scope, setting the strict boundaries, and ensuring that all of this complex output actually serves a coherent, ethical mission. In this framework, you essentially act as the external scout. Your core mandate is to constantly monitor the system for blind spots and gaps. So if your AI panel suddenly realizes it's lacking a specific capability, let's say it desperately needs deep legal analysis or complex physics calculations, it's your job to source a new, specialized model to fill that void. You initiate that 8-section audition we just talked about, test its cognitive geometry, and verify its collaborative fitness before you ever plug it into the matrix.
And as you're guiding all these models toward a conclusion, you absolutely must enforce what we call the explicit uncertainty zone. Listen, we don't want AIs just handing us a neatly packaged, oversimplified answer just to make us feel good. That's called false convergence, and it's downright dangerous. If there's a fact-based conflict, we verify it externally. If it's a value-based conflict, we force the AIs to explicitly explain their differing underlying priorities. What we want is a rich, multidimensional truth, fully complete with all its reported uncertainties.
So the real paradigm shift here is realizing that every single AI acts as a totally unique lens, revealing some amazing things while completely obscuring others. The final provocative question I want to leave you with today is this. Now that you know every single AI out there has a built-in blind spot, how are you going to design your own parliament of perspectives to uncover the whole truth? Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer, and remember, keep asking the hard questions.